Can't nobody steal your joy, Nomad family. Welcome back. It's your boy, Anthony Thomas, coming to you from the Francis Parker School in San Diego, California. I know we all been going through it, and sometimes you need a little pick-me-up. So smile is one of my pick-me-ups. It's something that I wake up to every morning as part of my daily routine to get me in the right frame of mind to tackle whatever challenges come my way. And it kind of reminds me of what UCLA's athletic director, my proud alma mater, Martin Drummond, who always says, mind right, game right. So thank you for joining us today. Mental health is real, and addressing it is part of the Nomad mission to take care of one another. It's time to remove the stigma and promote and model the necessary steps for us to take care of ourselves so we can take care of others. So today I am pleased to introduce Ivy Watts, a former Division II All-American track athlete who appeared to have it all together, but struggled daily with her mental health in silence. After finally seeking help, Ivy is now dedicated to promoting mental wellness and reducing mental health stigma by sharing her story through public speaking and her blog, Beautifully Simply You. Ivy, who is certified in mental health first aid and has her master's in public health, empowers others to speak their truths, know that they are not alone, learn the beauty of self-love, and find the strength to keep fighting for their tomorrows. So without further ado, I am going to stop sharing. I'm going to highlight the star of our show today, Miss Ivy Watts. Everybody, welcome Miss Ivy Watts to the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony, for that really awesome pump up before we get started. I appreciate that song. I love the energy behind smiling and the message. So incredible. I'm so excited to be here with all of you this afternoon or this morning, wherever you're at. I'm in Boston, so it's afternoon for me, a little bit after lunchtime. So I'm so happy that you all are here to really start thinking about not only what you can do for your school and for your coaches and for your athletes and their mental health, but really what you can do for yourself and your mental health. When we can start focusing on ourselves and what we need, that's when we can really start making a difference for others. But it has to start with us. And so I'm so proud of you for being here, and I hope that you're proud of yourself for being here as well. Before we get into everything that we're going to be talking about today, I want to acknowledge that this has been a really challenging time. As an athletic director, you have so much on your plate typically, and then you add in COVID and trying to juggle all of the different sports and testing and practices and making sure everyone's following protocols and guidelines and regulations, and it can be really overwhelming. And so it's okay if you're struggling right now with your responsibilities or with personal issues. It's okay to not be okay. And I want us to know that this virtual space is a safe space. And I want all of us to feel empowered to engage with me and to think differently about your own mental health or your students' mental health. If we can start doing that in this virtual space, that's when we can start making a difference around the culture that exists around mental health. And I also want to say that sometimes these conversations around mental health can start feeling a little bit uncomfortable. We want to figure out how we can turn those uncomfortable ones into comfortable ones, and we do that through having conversations. But if it ever becomes too uncomfortable or too triggering for you, please take care of yourself. Get up, take a break from your computer, come back and join us when you feel ready. We are having a Planet Fitness judgment-free zone in this virtual space. Awesome. So as this is a safe space, I'm going to ask us all to start off with a little activity. And so on a given day, depending on what time you're in right now, you probably have already asked the question, how are you? At least one time, maybe a dozen times. And a lot of times when we ask this question or when we get asked this question, we'll respond with good or fine or okay, even if we're not. And so I want to challenge that mindset right now. And I really want to ask you that question, how are you doing? But for the reflection of yourself, for you to start asking yourself, am I okay? And knowing that if the answer to that is, I'm not okay, that's more than okay. But by having that reflection, that's when you can give yourself what you need. So I'm going to invite you into the chat box and for you to share with me where you're at today on a scale of 0 to 100%. Again, knowing that no matter where you're at, it can feel scary sometimes to share, but this is a safe space. It can feel discouraging sometimes if you see some of your colleagues, your peers, your friends on here that are doing okay and you're not. When you can really take this as a space of honesty, that's when you can really start that healing journey for yourself. So I already see some coming into the chat box. So thank you for being bold and brave and sharing. I see 60%, 80%, 75%. Thank you so much for sharing. 15%. Thank you for being honest about that. It's been a really tough couple of months for me as well. And I feel like a lot of days I'm there as well. And that's okay. It's okay to be at those lower numbers. 55, 75. Awesome, awesome. So thank you all so much for sharing. I think it's a really great way for us to kick this off by having our own self-reflection. The other thing I want to have you do, not share in the chat just yet, but to have you do as a note down on a piece of paper or in your phone, is to think about two things. The first is to think about what's your biggest fear right now. Your biggest fear can be around the mental health of your students, of your children, of yourself. Your biggest fear could be around COVID and just performing and having games and keeping that going. Your fear could be around anything. Just take a moment and think about, what is your biggest fear? Is that success? Is that happiness? And then also take a moment and think about, what is your biggest strength as an individual? So what your biggest fear is and what your biggest strength. Just take a moment just to think about that. And we're going to come back to that at the end of our time together. So again, your biggest fear around really anything, and then your biggest strength as an individual. Awesome. All right, so we're going to go ahead and dive in. So growing up, I always struggled with my mental health, but I really struggled in silence. I grew up believing the stigma around mental health, especially growing up in a Black family. We never talked about mental health. We never talked about self-care. I never had those tools. And so I believed when society told me that talking about your struggles would show weakness. And so I couldn't let the world see me as weak. So I struggled and hid behind a smile, where I wanted the world to see me as perfect and as good enough, where internally I consistently felt that I wasn't good enough. Before I get into my story and the tools we'll be giving you today, I'm going to invite you back into that chat box for you to share with me an exclamation point if you also ever felt that same fear, that fear that you were afraid to talk about what you were going through because you were afraid of being labeled as weak. You were afraid of being judged by your colleagues, your family members. You were afraid of other people thinking differently of you or being a burden on other people. So instead, you held it in. Again, this is a safe space. I'm seeing a lot of exclamation points coming in. Some people are putting multiple. So that fear exists. We might feel that fear, and that might keep us from getting the help we need. Our coaches, our students, our loved ones might also feel that fear. So that fear really does come from that stigma. The stigma that exists that tells us that people who struggle might get labeled as weak, dangerous, lazy, or crazy. And in the athletic world, there's another layer of that stigma. In this culture where you're told to be strong all of the time. And then you add an additional layer there in communities of color, where again, you're not supposed to talk about your struggles outside of your family. You're supposed to really deal with it internally. And the fact that we don't talk about mental health. And so really recognizing all of those layers of stigma that can add up and allow us or keep us bottling all of those feelings on the inside. I struggled so much with so much stress that it was so debilitating to me. I struggled with social anxiety, where I had a lot of fear around having conversations with people or raising my hand in class for fear of making a mistake and truly hating myself for that mistake that I had made. I struggled so much with my identity. My parents used to always tell me to do my best, and I took that too literally. To me, I said doing my best meant being the best. So from a young age, I began to seek out perfection and said that anything else other than being perfect would be a failure. So all the while, I started to lose who I was because I didn't know who I was outside of being this track athlete. And so I had this idea that I needed to be perfect and good enough for other people. And I was losing who Ivy really was, not knowing how I could accept myself outside of being this athlete. My anxiety continued to grow. As I continued my track career through high school and college, the pressures and expectations of being a student athlete became too much for me. In college, I went to University of New Haven in Connecticut, and my coaches put so much pressure on me to run a particular goal. And that was to run 54 seconds in the 400-meter dash. And to me, this time was perfect. So I started to put my entire self-worth into running that goal. And even though I was doing everything right, the anxiety that I had been dealing with for so long kept me from performing to the best of my ability when I was at a meet. My coaches put so much emphasis into what I looked like or how much I weighed. And we were always told, get on the scale, let's see what you're weighing in at today. And so then my self-worth also started going into a number on the scale and how much I ate. And I began struggling with disordered eating patterns. And all the while through college and graduation, nobody recognized that I had been struggling so deeply, because on the outside, it looked like I had it all together. So they saw this student who was graduating, who was summa cum laude and had a 3.97 GPA, just like I did in high school, high honors again and again. They saw I was All-American in the 4x400, or that I was about to be named Woman of the Year for my conference after graduation, and a top 30 finalist for the NCAA Woman of the Year award. These really great accomplishments that to me, I struggled with really feeling anything behind them, because I truly felt like I was leaving college and my life as a failure, because I didn't meet the expectations of my coaches and my teammates and myself. And I truly just hated myself. And after losing my identity as an athlete after college, I began struggling with depression and thoughts of not wanting to be on this earth anymore. And after struggling for so long, I didn't know what I deserved, but felt like I deserved more. And so I recognized that I needed to learn how to be somebody other than just an athlete, and to learn to just like myself. And the journey was not easy. But the really kickstart of it all was having a conversation with a friend who also looked like she had it all together. And she told me that she was struggling and getting help through therapy. That was the big push I needed to break down the stigma that I grew up believing, and to finally get me into the doors of therapy, get me the help that I had needed for my entire life. And this finally allowed me to see that society has it all wrong, and that talking about your struggles does not show weakness at all, but that it shows so much strength. Therapy truly saved and changed my life. But sometimes we think about therapy as this scary, crazy thing for crazy people, that stigma, that's what society wants us to think. But we're going to change that dynamic right here in this virtual space. So I'm going to invite you, we're going to keep up with that fun experience we're having here. I'm going to invite you to do an activity with me. You're probably going to think this is really silly, but on the count of 3, I'm going to ask us all to unmute ourselves if you can. Otherwise, go in the chat box if you're in a space it's not going to work for you to unmute. And on the count of 3, I want us all to say, woohoo, out loud together, okay? You're probably like, what is happening? I promise you there's a purpose in this activity. Okay, so unmute yourself if you can. Otherwise, I want to see you in the chat box. So 1, 2, 3. Woo! Woo! Awesome, hearing lots of them. I love the lag in internet when like people come on later. It's awesome. All right, so now tell me, what is the one thing you use to make that beautiful sound? Either go in the chat box or let me know by unmuting yourself. What's the one thing you use to make that sound? Yes, your voice. Thanks, Anthony. You have the upper hand there, but I haven't seen this once before. Your voice. You all have this beautiful tool within you. Your students, your coaches, everyone around you, this beautiful tool within us that we can use to unpack what we've gone through. That allows us to unpack the pain, the stress, the pressures, the expectations that we might have been under. That allows us to unpack all of the constant changes that come along with COVID and being an athletic director, and the stress and the pressure and the confusion and the anger. That allows us to unpack any past traumas, any relationship issues. And that is healing. That is not selfish. It is a form of healing and a form of self-care. And all of you are so incredibly worthy of recognizing the power of your voice, not only to make changes at your school, in your community, in the world, but also to make those changes within yourself for healing. So after finding my voice and going to therapy, recovery for me also looked like practicing the power of affirmations, telling myself I was beautiful and capable, even though I had spent my entire life saying the complete opposite. And even though the change didn't happen overnight, after doing this work, going to therapy, finding my support system that had always been there for me, but that my brain tried to tell me didn't exist, and practicing the power of affirmations. For the first time in my life, I actually did begin to love myself. I actually did feel beautiful. I was finally able to nurture my mental health, what I hadn't been able to do my entire life. But even though I got to this space of self-love, I won't lie and say that recovery isn't a process, because it is. I still struggle. As I mentioned in the beginning, I still have those days where I might feel like I'm at a 15% or even lower. I struggle right now in this moment. My mom's pancreatic cancer diagnosis. I recognize how heavy that lays on my heart and how that impacts my self-confidence, my sense of self-worth, my motivation. I recognize all of those things, but that's okay. It is okay to not be okay. If we can recognize that it's not about being happy or positive all of the time, and that it's okay to have those bad times, that's when we can start making a difference for the culture of our school and the mental health culture that exists, and breaking the layers of the stigma. Because it's not about being happy or positive all of the time. It's about having that compassion and love for yourself that you so easily give to others. We're going to have lots of really great days that we'll celebrate, but we'll also have lots of really tough days. But we'll only grow in strength and resiliency from those days. Recognizing that in those tough days, you can figure out what feels good for you. You can create this foundation of self-care, self-love, strength, resiliency, compassion. And that's only going to help you through future difficult times. Instead of pushing those feelings away and saying that they're insignificant, or that you should suck it up, or that other people have it worse, it's important to acknowledge those feelings, acknowledge that you're not okay, and then give yourself what you need to start feeling even just a little bit better. And so I share my story to break down the walls of stigma. I share my story for us to all acknowledge that we all struggle with something, whether it's a diagnosed mental health problem or not. We all struggle with something, and we are not alone in what we're going through. When we can start acknowledging that for ourselves, that is the difference that we can start to make all around us. And so I now want to transition into what we can do as athletic directors to really change the culture around mental health at our school. And so everyone's in different situations. You might have a really great mentally healthy culture at your school. You might be trying to figure it out still. Knowing that wherever you're at, it's never too late to start, and it's always important to keep moving forward, knowing that you can keep putting one foot in front of the other on this journey. So one of the biggest things that I wish I had at my school was just really having the conversation. We would always have orientation meetings at the beginning of the year, whether that was in high school or in college. And I really wish there was a space for us to just learn about mental health and athletics and what that looks like, what performance anxiety looks like, tools to work through that, what self-care looks like. And also just, here's the counseling center, here are your guidance counselors, here are your resources. Let's take a walk together to that person's door, their office, and let's have that introduction. Let's have that space for you to get to know these people. To have people come in, whether that was alumni or speakers, not just saying that because I'm a speaker, but having somebody come and to share their own experiences, because there's power in story to break down the stigma around mental health. So I think as an athletic director, your influence really, really matters. And so you can make a really big difference. And that might feel really overwhelming as well. And so we'll talk about how you can work through those overwhelming feelings. But knowing that your influence really matters, and that you can really make a difference of what happens for the coaches and for the student athletes. And so again, starting the year off with conversations around mental health, discussing self-care, allowing them to know that it's okay to not be okay, providing resources, and then really setting some norms and expectations. So that can also look like working with your coaches and having really a unified front around what's going to happen if a student athlete is struggling, who you're going to send that student athlete to, how you're all going to take care of yourselves first before you take care of others. Having that expectation and norms for your athletes as well, so they know what's going to happen when they speak up. It can be really, really scary to use your voice, right? I kind of made it seem easy, but it can be really, really scary to do that. And so recognizing that there might be a lot of barriers there. But when we can be clear on what's going to happen after a student athlete opens up to us or to a coach, can make the process a little bit easier. So start the year off with a mentally healthy culture and continue those conversations throughout the year through trainings and workshops, or just self-care techniques like meditating together, or having some stretch breaks that you spend some time talking about the power of affirmations. And so that's what you can do with your coaches, as well as encouraging them to spend some time at practice or at meetings to really have that mental wellness into everything they're doing. So again, that can be a stretch breaks where you're doing affirmations. That can be affirmations at the beginning of practice, taking a break in the middle of practice for a water break, saying some affirmations, then rewiring our brain, the power of that. Spending some time doing journal prompts together, having some space to give your athletes the tools that they need, so that when they're back at home, they can say, well, I'm really struggling right now. What can I use that's going to help me? Oh, I remember earlier we did journaling. I'm not sure why we were really doing it, but it kind of was nice just to get things off my chest. There's a self-care tool that they now have in their pocket that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So providing the spaces for mental wellness is really, really critical. And then also encouraging your coaches to have check-ins in different creative ways. Sometimes the word mental health might not always be receptive for everybody. It might not lead them to opening up. And so if you have different creative check-ins, like we did in the beginning, we had the battery scale check-in. You can do colors. So maybe you have red, yellow, and green. Tell me what color you are today. And then you have a fourth color, like purple. And you can say, if you're whatever color you are, let me know. If you choose purple as well, that might mean that you want to talk about it. So if a student says, I'm red, I'm not purple as well, I don't want to talk about it, I just want you to know that I'm struggling. But if I'm red and purple, please have a conversation with me about this. When you can have those consistent check-ins, those consistent conversations, those consistently asking, how are you, and truly meaning it, that can really communicate a message to the athletes that they can talk about their mental health in this space. And it might take time throughout all of these things of orientation meetings with mental wellness and resources and discussions. It might not be that an athlete overnight comes to you, but by having this foundation set around a mental health culture, when they are ready to talk to somebody, they'll know exactly what to do, because that culture has already been set, that it's okay for them to struggle, and here's the resources available for them. And then knowing your resources. Knowing that with mental health, it can be really overwhelming, especially you might not have had any training before in mental health. It's okay to not have had that training. It's always great to do it, but knowing that you have resources that you connect your athletes to, you can connect your coaches to, and that you can use for yourself. Those resources exist at your school, in your community, and online. But really having a background knowledge of what resources there are can be really, really beneficial to kind of break some of that fear around mental health conversations. And so I'm going to show you a couple of online resources that you can use, again, for yourself. You can suggest to your coaches, to suggest to their athletes, or that you can suggest to an athlete if you ever recognize something's going on and you have a space for a conversation and you don't know what to do. Reaching out or telling that student that there's a resource that can help them even more than you can be really powerful for them. So the My3 app is an app that you can have 3 people on there in a time of crisis, having a bad day, whatever it is. So maybe for your student athlete or for a coach, that's a teammate, a parent, and a sibling or a best friend. Or maybe for you, it's a partner, a friend, and a cousin, or 2 best friends, whatever it is. You have those people on your phone right in this app that you can call, and if one person doesn't answer, you have access to the other 2 right at your fingertips. There's a safety plan in there, reasons to live, your self-care tools that you can have, a really great way to have everything at your fingertips. This is powered by the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is a 24/7 lifeline that you can call if you're having thoughts of suicide, but also if you're having a bad day. Knowing that no matter what you're going through, or your students are going through, your coaches are going through, it's important and it matters. And so this resource is a really great resource to reach out to know that there's a trained individual on the other side to help you through whatever struggle you're having. Can also be really beneficial if you're in a situation with someone who is struggling with thoughts of suicide and you don't know what to do or don't know what to say. This is a really great resource to walk you through that situation. Therapy for Black men and Therapy for Black girls are 2 resources that I think are so incredibly important. The stigma around mental health in communities of color, as I'm sure all of you know, is just so much more heightened. and was one of the big reasons that I didn't get the help that I needed for a long time, and was a really, really huge barrier to me wanting to tell my family that I was struggling. And I never had the words for it. I couldn't be judged. I couldn't receive that any negativity that was in my mind, or that being weak, all of that negative stigmatizing language. So these two resources are really great to break that stigma, to connect with others who have also struggled, and also to find therapists of color in your area. It can be a really great way to feel less alone in your struggle, and to know that you're not the only one, and that there is power and not shame in seeking that help. The Trevor Project is great for LGBTQ youth. This is a really great resource that you can encourage your student athletes to use if they identify with the LGBTQ community. Really great way to connect with others, again, and they also have a 24/7 lifeline. And then the crisis text line, very similar to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, but instead of calling, you text. 24/7 support, no matter what you're going through, to get you the help that you need in that moment. As I mentioned, it's been a rough couple of months for me. I have used the crisis text line because my brain still likes to tell me sometimes that the closest people to me won't understand. So it can be a really great resource if you feel like you're going to be a burden on somebody else, or that someone else won't understand, to have this trained individual on the other side, doesn't know you, they don't ask you your name, just this person that can be there to validate your experiences. I think it's a really powerful tool. When we can start doing this work for ourselves, when we can start recognizing the resources, when we can start recognizing that it's okay to talk about mental health, when we can be open about our own struggles and be relatable, it's another thing you can do at an orientation meeting. Maybe you're opening up about your own struggles. I know Anthony did that the other night when I spoke with his athletes and coaches, and I think that's really, really powerful to communicate that message that you've also struggled, and that's okay. And when they can see that someone that they admire, somebody that they look up to, somebody that has a lot of influence also struggles, and that we're all human, that allows us to know that we aren't alone, and that it's okay to be where we're at. Okay, so we just spent some time talking about some tools that you can use to start changing the culture at your school, and I'm happy to answer any questions further as we go through. But now I really want to shift our dynamic to focus on you. A lot of times we will put ourselves on the back burner, especially as athletic directors. I can't even imagine, you have so much on your plate. And it can be very easy to say, I can't take care of myself. I don't have time. I don't have those 2 minutes. Those 2 minutes, I need to be doing everything else. I'm picking up the phone, I'm answering emails, I'm doing this, doing that, really responding to this crisis. But recognizing that in this moment, you're doing something for you. You're taking something away for your busy schedule, and you're being able to be here to practice your mental wellness. So reframe your mindset that a lot of times we'll tell ourselves that we don't have the time, but even just finding 1 minute, that 1 minute that you might be scrolling through social media, that 1 minute you might be sending a message to somebody, you can just take a moment in that time and to do something for you. And we're going to go through some of those tangible tools you can do really anywhere at any time. And so I'm going to actually ask you, before I share some tools, what are some tools that you're using for self-care? And again, I know you might say self-care, like I don't have time for that. But what's something that maybe you did before when you were struggling? Or what's something that you are doing now when you're feeling super stressed out, when you're feeling overwhelmed? What do you do that helps you to feel even just a little bit more calm or happy or relieved? What do you do in those moments? Go ahead and share. You can either unmute yourself or go in the chat. I see Tammy says, getting massages twice a month. I love that. I really wish I could do that more often. That's a really good one. I feel like I've been like a little nervous with COVID, so that's awesome. I need to like do that more. I love that one. So treating yourself, doing something that makes you feel good and just relax. Playing golf, yeah, so doing something fun that you enjoy that's not related to work. So that can be golf or a different activity. Chatting with your friends, taking a nap, quiet time to yourself, and journaling. Yes, definitely. So disconnecting from everything else around you, disconnecting from your phone and from other people, if that feels good, and just being with yourself. Spending time with your daughter. I love that one. And I'm sure that's great for her as well, having that space to just be together. Social connection can be really huge for our mental health. Swimming and biking, so movement, working out, moving our body. We're going to talk about that one as well. Mindfulness and deep breathing. Awesome. Yeah, the power of meditation, the power of our breath. Relaxing with no agenda, working out, spending time with your family and friends. hiking, walking your dog. We had a dog appearance on here earlier. If you all missed that, hopefully Rocket will come back out. Awesome. Being in nature, I love it. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing some tools with you as well, and keep sharing in the chat for those that you have. The biggest self-care technique I want you all to really walk away with is to allow yourself to feel how you're feeling. No matter how big or how small you think your struggle is, or someone else thinks your struggle is, it's important and valid. I always say, if you stubbed your toe and it's bothering you a couple of days later mentally, like, that's okay. If it's a big deal to you, it can be a big deal to you. Sometimes we'll say that our feelings are insignificant compared to what's happening in the world or compared to what someone else is going through. But allowing yourself to know that what you're going through matters, because you matter. No matter your busy schedule, no matter what mistakes you've made, you matter as you are in this moment. So allow yourself to feel that sadness, that confusion, that anger, whatever it is. And then ask yourself, what do I need that's going to help me to feel even just 5 or 10% better? When we started off, I asked you to do a reflection of where you were at. And some of you might have been at a lower number. Some of you might have been at a higher number. Wherever you were at, by practicing self-care, it doesn't always fix the problem, but what it does is it gives you the space and the grace to feel even just a little bit better, get up a little bit higher in those percentages. And that allows you to be more effective at whatever was stressing you out beforehand. Journaling is a really great tool, especially if you haven't found your woohoo voice. That was a really long one. I like drew that out. I think I have Rocket inspired in me. So journaling is a really great tool, because when you journal, you can let out a lot of your feelings in a really safe space. Allows you to make connections about things you are struggling with that you might not have made had you just left it all on the inside. It allows you to just release that pain off your chest. And so it can be a really great tool and a safe space to just get things off that feel heavy and start to feel better. And you can journal about really anything. You can free flow journal, right? You can do prompted journaling through gratitude and affirmations, which are really powerful. You can write down one good thing from every day. You can write down the highlight, maybe the one thing you want to improve on from your day. A really great space to let those feelings out. Meditation is another great tool to use, and allows you to just live where your feet are. Because we can't change the past. We can't change all that COVID's taken away from us. We can't change any traumas that we've experienced or relationship issues. And we can't control what's going to happen in the future. As much as we'd love to control COVID being over and getting back to playing sports normally and having the normal level of stress, not this heightened level of stress, we can't control that. But the one thing we can do is we can be in this current moment. And that's what meditating allows you to do. Meditation might feel overwhelming because you might be sitting and you're listening to maybe a guided meditation, and then your brain starts thinking about all the things you haven't done on your list that you haven't thought about for 6 months, right? Your brain tends to go to these places when you're sitting here in silence. And so meditation can sometimes feel overwhelming, but I want to empower you to recognize that you can meditate in a lot of different ways. You can go out and take a walk and meditate and really feel your feet planted on the ground or the air on your body. And that's a form of meditation. You can be here with me right now in this moment, like really tuned in. You're living right here in this moment. That's a form of meditation. Or you can dance and listen to music and move your body and really feel that movement. That's meditation. Live in this moment. That allows a lot of peace and calm into your world. And then taking a break. Do something that feels good for you. Our lives are so go, 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 go. And we might feel guilty about taking that break. When we don't take that break, we might struggle even more. And so when we do allow ourselves to even just have 2 seconds to breathe, right? We have that tool within us. We have our breath. We can take a moment in between constant emails and just take a deep breath a couple of times and recognize the healing power of that. By taking a break or even just having a genuine lunch break and not checking email during lunch, just actually sitting and enjoying and tasting your food, being here in that moment with your food, that can allow you to reduce that stress and be more effective at what you were doing before. And then taking a walk, moving your body in some way, so powerful. Getting some fresh air can be really rejuvenating. Our minds and our bodies are so interconnected. And so when you're struggling, it might be that your body is often telling you that you're struggling through headaches or stomach aches or trembling. I struggled with a lot of those things. But on the flip side, we can also actually help our mental health through moving our body. Because when we move our body, we're sending these signals to our brain and we're helping to reduce stress and anxiety. We're sending these good feelings to our brain. So it can be really powerful when you move your body, that you're doing something good for your physical health, while you're also doing something great for your mental health. And then affirmations and gratitude. Affirmations are huge. You might not have ever thought before about what makes you beautiful, and that's okay. But you can start asking other people what they love about you, not for external validation, but to start reminding yourself of all of the beautiful things that exist about you as you are in this moment. Start rewiring your brain to see that you bring so many amazing qualities to this world. Again, despite any mistakes or mishaps that you've experienced or done in your life, that's okay. But that there are so many great things about you. And when you can start seeing that for yourself, your life can truly begin to change. And then gratitude. I'm going to invite you back into the chat another time. And I'm going to have you put a hashtag sign. If you've ever thought about the fact that you're grateful that you can move some part of your body, or that maybe your body works, your organs works, that way you can breathe and be here with me right now. So you're just grateful that you can move your head, your hands, your legs, your lungs are pumping right now so you can breathe and be here with me right now. And it's okay if you've never thought about any of those things before. But one way you can start being more grateful is, instead of saying, I have to, you say, I get to. So some of you might be saying, oh, I have to go to another meeting after this, or I have to pick up the kids later, I have to cook later. And that sounds so daunting. When you say, I get to go to this meeting later, I get to go to class, I get to go to work, I get to cook, I get to clean, I get to, then you become grateful that you even had that opportunity that others don't for whatever reason. Having a job, having a roof over your head that allows you to even clean the space that you're in. It's this mindset change that can help to put a lot of peace, positivity, calm in your world and reduce that stress and anxiety, right? Lisa gets to do yoga this morning, right? You found that time and you got to do yoga. That's incredible. I love that. I also did yoga this morning. That's awesome. Perfect. So when we started off, I asked all of you to think about two things: your biggest fear and your biggest strength. This is another self-care tool that I want you all to have today, is to acknowledge that our fears are a feeling. Just like any other feeling, those fears are important and valid, right? Stubbing your toe is important, it's valid if it matters to you. But recognizing that those fears can be debilitating. Those fears can keep us from reaching our goals, from feeling good about ourselves, from helping other people. And so those fears can often hold us back. But we can recognize that we have the strengths and tools within us to push past those fears and to reach all of the goals that we want to reach. And so what I want us to do now is to look at our fears from a strength-based framework. And so I'm going to ask for two brave volunteers, either to unmute yourself and share, go in the chat box and share, or to send me a private message in the chat box, and I won't say your name out loud if that feels better, and share. And to put your biggest fear and your biggest strength into this framework. And so while those two brave volunteers are thinking about who they're going to be, I'm going to go ahead and give you an example. So the best way to do this is when you send it to me or say it out loud, is to say like your full statement, not just saying my fear is this and my strength is that, like really put it into this framework, and I'll show you what that looks like. So although my biggest fear is that I will struggle just as much as I did in college or in the years after college, I feel empowered to support the mental health of my athletes and myself and to reach my goals, because my biggest strength as an individual is that I'm a hard worker and I never give up. And so I can recognize that fear of struggling just as much as I did in college when I was struggling with depression and lack of identity and self-worth is valid. Because of everything I have going on right now, sometimes I feel myself slipping into those dark spaces. But I feel empowered to continuously share my story and support others, and also support myself, because I'm a hard worker. And I've gotten through challenging times before. I got through that challenging time with my mental health struggle. And because I'm a hard worker, I know now that I'm going to reach out to my support system, I'm going to reach out to resources. I'm going to have another appointment with my therapist and call her and say, hey, I need to meet with you sooner. And that I have these tools within me that's going to help me to push past this fear. So I recognize that my fear is valid, and I'm not pushing that away or dismissing it, but I'm recognizing that my strengths are so much bigger to help me to reach my goals. So I need two brave volunteers so that we can get into our next fun part and wrap it up for questions. All right, so I see part of of a fear. So I'll just need your strength as well. Again, if you want to unmute and share, snaps for you, whatever feels good for you.
Ivy, I can share.
Awesome, thank you.
So I'm just to read the statement here, correct?
Correct. So implement your
And fill in
fear
my
and
blanks.
your strength. Yep.
Okay. So although my fear is that I don't want to let anyone down, I feel empowered to support the mental health of my athletes and myself because my biggest strength as an individual is that I care.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate that. So I'll give some snaps for Tony for being bold and brave and sharing in front of everybody. I know it can be scary, so I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to say that one more time. So although my fear is that I don't want to let anyone down, I'm afraid that I will let others down, I feel empowered to support the mental health of my athletes and myself because my biggest strength as an individual is that I care. I'm a caring person. So I have this fear that I'm going to let other people down. I'm going to let my student athletes down, my friends and my family down. I might even let myself down. Those are some valid fears, right? And a lot of times our minds will tell us some of those negative things. But I feel empowered to support the mental health of athletes, myself, because I care. And so I care so much that means I'm going to put my caring mindset into everything that I'm doing. I'm going to show up for others. I'm going to show up for myself. I'm going to give other people what they need, just like I've done before in the past. I'm going to make sure that I'm asking myself how I'm doing and give myself what I'm doing because I care about others. I'm going to care about myself as well. And so even if things happen in this world where we don't meet expectations, all of the other things that we've been doing or that you've been doing of being caring and kind and compassionate and loving, all of those things that go into being a caring person will outweigh that one time that maybe you didn't live up to that expectation or do things as perfectly as you wanted to, because what is perfect, right? It's this unrealistic ideal that just makes us feel bad about ourselves. So I have this fear that I'm going to let other people down, but I have cared for them before. I'm going to care for them in the future. That's just going to continuously show me and them that I'm this great person and that I can continuously support others because I have this caring nature. When my athletes are struggling, they'll know who to go to, and I'll create this culture at my school because my coaches will know to care because I'm a caring person, and therefore my athletes will start to get the help that they need. So recognizing the power of the strength that you have and that we might let other people down sometimes, but that's okay. You have the tools, you have the strength within you to continuously move forward. So thank you again so much, Tony, for sharing. And then I also have one more in the chat box. So thank you so much. And Rick, you shared it out loud in the chat, not privately to me. So I appreciate you doing that. So snaps for Rick as well. And so although my biggest fear is to be trapped in a situation I don't want to be in, I feel empowered to support the mental health of my student athletes and myself because my biggest strength as an individual is that I'm empathetic and resilient. So I might be afraid that I'm going to get trapped in a situation I don't want to be in, whatever that might be, whatever your fear is of what you don't want to be in, what situation you don't want to be in. That can be a negative or sad situation. That can be something that's really frightening for you, but you're empathetic and you're resilient. I think the biggest thing there too is that you're resilient. And so you can look back at your life and you can look back and see all of the tough times that you got through that you thought that you wouldn't get through, that felt impossible to get through, but yet you're doing it and you're moving forward each and every single day. And so if you're in a situation that you don't want to be in, you can come back to that resilience and say, you know, maybe I haven't been in this exact scenario before, but I've been in a similar one. And what did I do then that helped me to get out of it or gave me the tools to work through it? And so remembering that resilience means that you can push through tough times just like you have before in the past. So no matter what situation you end up being in, you have those tools within you. You have this strength within you to push through that tough time. So I really, really appreciate both Tony and Rick, and I appreciate all of you, whether you shared or not, whether you did it or not. I encourage you to take a screenshot of this slide and to do this for yourself, or to encourage your coaches to do this, or your coaches to do it with their athletes. It's a really great tool to use as a grounding tool, to recognize that our fears feel really, really heavy and overwhelming, but our strengths are so much bigger and speak volumes. And that's what we want to recognize to help to rewire our brain, help to change our mindset, help us to reach our goals. And that can be really powerful for our athletes, for them to see that they have fears around performance and living up to expectations, but they have their strengths. And that can help them to be their best athlete, the best person that they want to be. Awesome. So I do see one more in the chat box, and I will come back to it if we don't have lots of questions, but I do want to provide space for questions. So thank you so much to the person that shared. I really do appreciate you. But I'm just going to keep moving forward, and we'll come back if there are not a lot of questions. So the last tangible self-care tool I want to give to all of you is the power of positivity. And so we truly act consistent with who we think we are. When we tell ourselves that we're not worthy or capable or say negative things to ourselves, that's how we're going to act. That's how we're going to feel about ourselves. When we can change our mindset to be more positive, that's when our lives can begin to change. That's when we can start carrying ourselves differently. That's when we can get closer to those larger goals that we have for ourselves. So I want us all to finish up with this one small but very, very tangible tool, a tool that helped to change my life, a tool that helps to rewire your brain when you're feeling like you're not doing good enough, that you're not meeting expectations, that you're so overwhelmed that it feels debilitating. You can come back to the foundation of positivity, self-love, and compassion. And that can do wonders for your brain because your body, your mind truly believes what you're telling it. So choose to tell yourself positive things, even when it's difficult. Acknowledge those negative feelings, just like we acknowledge any other feeling, but then allow yourself to gently push them away and replace it with a positive statement. And so what I want us all to do now is to repeat these affirmations together. This can be a great tool that you can give to your coaches to have them do at practice that literally takes like 3 seconds. And so I want us all, just like we did earlier, to unmute ourselves if we can. Otherwise, I need to see you in the chat box. But I'm going to say the first statement, then you'll say it, then I'll say the second statement, and then you'll say it. I think you'll get it. So just try not to go to the next one without me saying it first. All right, so go ahead and unmute yourself. I need to hear you saying the power of these affirmations. So I am worthy.
I am worthy.
Perfect. I am capable.
I am
capable.
And good. I am good enough.
I am good enough.
All right, all right. So my husband's on overnight this week and he's sleeping in the other room, and I'm still gonna get really loud because I don't think we got loud enough for that. We need to feel the power of those statements. Wherever you are in the country, I need to feel you here in Boston, Massachusetts. I need to feel the power of these affirmations and recognizing that who you are is worthy, good enough, capable, strong, beautiful, talented, and can do anything you want in this world. If we can start having that foundation for ourselves, we can start changing the culture at our school. We can start making a difference in changing and saving lives. So I know it might seem silly or uncomfortable or superficial. The change might not happen overnight, but let's get loud to recognize that right now, despite our busy schedules, we are sending positive messages to our brain. And that is a self-care tool that can carry us through the rest of our days. So I'm going to get loud, and I need you to get loud with me. Otherwise, chat box, capital letters, and exclamation points. So I am worthy.
I am worthy.
Lots better. Again, my husband's in the other room sleeping. I am capable.
I am capable.
I'm a great wife. Let's get really loud for this last one. Putting all of our heart into recognizing the power.
We're shouting.
I am good enough.
Amazing, amazing. I've probably woke him up. It's okay. Like I said, I'm a great
Say
wife.
hi.
I appreciate you all so much for participating in those affirmations with me, and I hope you all felt the power in them. I hope you all know that if you're ever struggling, that it's okay. You can always use your voice to begin your healing journey. And know that by doing this work during this challenging time for your self-care, knowing that you have to put yourself first in order to help other people, that you can start nurturing your mental, your physical health, and you can become unstoppable. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can break this culture. Start today, no matter where you've been before, start today and start implementing mental wellness in everything that you do with your coaches and your athletes. And know that you're never alone on this journey. And I'm fighting for you, just like I'm fighting for me every single day. And I want you to fight for you too. So thank you all so much for being here. I know I talked a lot, so we technically only have 5 minutes for questions, but I will open it up now for questions. So there's a couple of ways to do that. Unmute yourself, please, if you want to say it out loud. Otherwise, chat box works. Private message, again, I won't say your name out loud. Perks of Zoom, perks of COVID life, right? Changing our mindset. And then if those don't feel good or you need to run, my contact information is on the screen. My mental health blog, Beautifully Simply You, my email, social media. And I mean it when I say reach out to me if you have questions or just want to talk. I'm 100% here for you, and I will 100% respond to you. So please feel free to reach out with any questions that you have at any point. So thank you both so much. I appreciate you. The thanks in the chat box. I'm glad that it was inspiring. I appreciate you. Yeah, any questions, let me know. I'm here. I'm also in no rush, so I know I'm not hosting the Zoom, but I'm also welcome to chat with people afterwards too. I don't have a meeting after this, so.
Ivy, that was fantastic as always. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. I really especially appreciate the resources that you provide. So I'm hoping that our members who joined us today will take advantage of that and work within their communities to support our student athletes and themselves in every way possible.
For sure, yeah. I know the fact that there are so many resources available is really great. So definitely take advantage of them. And thank you so much, Anthony. I appreciate that. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Any questions that folks have or thoughts or anything like that?
Ivy, what would you say to a young athlete that struggles from that perfection gene? Because I think that's where a lot of our struggles come in, because students want to try to be perfect, and then when they're not, they feel like they start to read the mind of their coach or their teacher, and they're reading it as negative, even maybe when it's not. But what would you say to a student that's locked in that perfectionist mode?
Right. Yeah, definitely. And, you know, I call myself a recovering perfectionist because I still struggle with a lot of those things. It's definitely something that many of us do. And I think with that pressure and expectation that we might feel, it only adds to that. So I think the biggest thing with having a perfectionist mindset is recognizing that perfect is different for everybody. So what you just deem as perfect is going to be different than the person sitting right next to you. And so what I do a lot when I'm working with students who have that perfectionist mindset is really coming back to learning to love yourself. I think that's really, really critical in having that self-love journey of being able to see that there's always going to be pressure. There's always going to be expectations. There's always going to be someone who wants you to do a little bit more and you feel like you're falling short. When you can like acknowledge that that's going to make you potentially feel not great, but then you can come back to your self-love and the fact that who you are is good enough, and that, you know, it truly is beautiful to be able to accept yourself and to not spend your whole life chasing out perfection, and to recognize that you can have that self-acceptance, and you can do that through the power of journaling, the power of affirmations, and making it a consistent practice. So I'd encourage that athlete to kind of identify their triggers of when they feel the most not good enough. That's not grammatically correct, but when they don't feel good enough, what situations are there that are triggering them to feel that way? And then really taking those moments and recentering their mind, and really coming up with those like strength words or affirmation statements that they can come back to, that really just kind of help to center them and remind them of their worth. And as I spoke about with the affirmations, it's not something that necessarily changes right away or overnight, but they are sending these messages to their brain. I think when they can do that in the moment and then do that as a consistent practice when they're on their own, it can allow them to have a strong foundation of just being good, feeling good in their own skin, and knowing that that expectation is going to be there. But when they can feel strong in who they are, that can help them to be, you know, to perform better, and actually to kind of reach those goals when they're just allowing themselves to be who they are and enjoy the journey. So everyone's situation is different, but I think that that's really powerful and was really powerful for me to work through that perfectionist mindset.
I like the strength words and the affirmation, because I think what I found with, I'm working with a cheerleader right now who is just straight perfectionist, but anytime I say things like think positive thoughts and everything, she goes, when I start the positive thinking part, I become negative. So I think I love the strength words where that's your focus and you know where to go to get your focus. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that strength word, that word of intention to come back to, I think can be really, really helpful as a grounding technique of like whatever her strength word is, I think can be powerful. And I think also I'll say just like allowing her to acknowledge that when you try to be positive, sometimes you will be negative. You'll be negative with yourself for not being positive, and it can become a vicious cycle of like just being mad at ourselves. And I think the key thing there is having some self-compassion and patience and forgiveness, and knowing that it's okay to start again. It's okay if you said, I am worthy, and then your brain said, no, you're not. And then you say, okay, I'm going to try again, instead of just saying, oh, I give up. So really just recognizing that it's okay to start again and again. And that's part of self-compassion.
That's awesome. Thanks, Ivy. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.
Ivy, I've got a question. Do we have time, Anthony, for another question?
Absolutely.
Hey, hi, Ivy, I'm Carolyn. I've got a question for you. And then whatever comfort level you want to answer this in whatever realm is fine. But like when you're an athlete, right? And now in this self-care and wellness mode that you embody, what is it about your experience, like at high school, that you're reframing now, that you have to reframe now? Like, what is it that kids that are with us now might have to unknot later on with these techniques, right? Like, what can we do now at this juncture while they're in our care, that can spare them from that in the future? What specifically can we do?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. And I think it kind of goes back to the idea of like just starting. I think sometimes we kind of like want to wait until we have like all of our chips in a row, our ducks in a row, and we can kind of miss out on key moments there. And so I think, you know, you can really just start in making sure that mental wellness is implemented really in everything you do. And I think those hands-on self-care techniques. So the one hands-on self-care technique we did today was like the strength and the fears, but you can like literally do journaling hands-on together. Like you can find journal prompts really easily. You can create your own and spend some time, like maybe each of the athletes are doing it on their phone or, you know, purchasing some cheap journals if that's available. And just having a space where they can journal together. And if they feel like it's a safe enough space, and they can share, and being able to create that culture that they can get these things off their chest. So you can create that space of having hands-on self-care tools around meditation. Another one that I didn't have time to do with you all today, but I really, really love, and I'm putting in the chat, is called Eft Tapping. And it's basically like taking your dominant hand and tapping on different energy points. So there's 10 different energy points, and repeating an affirmation at the same time. And that's been really helpful for veterans and PTSD. And so it's been helpful for people with anxiety as well. And it helps me when I have anxiety. And so it's been really helpful to reduce that anxiety. You're tapping on those points, and it can produce feelings of calm. So like those hands-on activities, I think is really important to create space for. So whether that's meetings, again, orientation meetings, check-ins that your coaches have with their athletes, maybe you have a school-wide event that you're gonna like do hands-on breakout rooms and mental health techniques. But I think all of the techniques we talked about today, unfortunately, we didn't have time to do on hands-on, but knowing that you can do each and every single one of those hands-on with your athletes, you can encourage them to take a break. And in that break, we're going to practice self-care, right? So for me, that would have been huge to just know even just one self-care technique. All I knew was negativity, self-hate, mental health problem. Like that's all I knew. And so I didn't know there was something I could do to stop that cycle. And so I think that's really powerful, I think, to your question of just finding the tools early on, so that when they struggle in the future, because we all will, it's inevitable, we're going to struggle with something, we have the tools that we can use to work through them because we learned them.
I think it's just like Steve was talking about, we see this behavior in athletes, but like in my experience, like the athletes, they know some of these techniques and they share them with me, but for some reason they think in the sports space, like they don't avail themselves of that because it's competitive, because they can't show vulnerability. And so, yeah, like I think that's where the dissonance is with me sometimes, is that they kind of know it, but then like they clown oh God, there's coach just being affirming again, you know, because, you know, I'm also trying to get them ready for a contest. Right. So yeah. That's where that struggle is for me.
Yeah. And I think one of the differences there might be that, so maybe, you know, you're doing them in orientation meetings, so then it doesn't transfer to them in a game or a competition. And so I think it's a really good space to like do it within practice. And so if they're learning that like during practice, like you might notice, like from a coach's point of view, you might notice that your athletes are not performing well. They're super anxious. Just it's not a good practice. It's not going well. And so instead of like yelling and kind of trying to like push them through it, you can take that break and implement self-care and like talk about how that can help you to perform better. And sometimes, like, right, you said like that affirming coach, right? So maybe you're taking the language out of it and saying like, this is going to help you to perform better, right? This is going to help us to win that game, and like going back to their competitive mindset. And that can, I think, be helpful for them to see, like, when I'm in the moment and I'm stressed, I can do X, and that helps. So it might not be journaling, but it can be the strength word, the affirmations, it can be breathing, it can be tapping. So that way, if you're doing it in practice, that they can see that it will also translate to a competition. Is that helpful?
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much.
That's
Thanks,
great, Ivy. Thank you so much again for being here. We have to close down for the day, but we
I'm sorry I
appreciate
talked
your
too much.
time. Don't worry, no, it was great, and we're so grateful for your willingness to be available to us as we move forward. So I just want to thank everyone again for being here. We will send out our next webinar, which will be Tuesday, April 13th. We'll send out more information about that one because that one's going to be a really exciting one, and we're gearing up for that one. So I hope everyone have a really good day, and we will see you guys the next time. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Take care. Awesome.